In any event, the war against Midian was not a war of territory. It's not a war of capturing the land of Israel. When we were about to read the return of the army in verse 13, and let's read it right now, after they're coming back and led by Pinchas, who's like the leader of the army, which is unusual because he's not an army leader. He is the grandson of the former Kohen Gadol, and we asked, why is he being led? Some of you said, well, in the name of Rashi, he's the one that began the job, the function of hitting the Midianites by killing a leader, a daughter of royalty, Kozbi bat Tzur. As we see, Tzur is one of 5 kings killed in this war. And he kills a leader from the tribe of Shimon. He started it. Hadam matril b'mitzvah, omrim lo gemor. A person that begins the mitzvah, we say to him, gemor, which means finish it, ligmor, to finish the job. There's another concept, I think in Devarim chapter 20, that some of the commentaries make, called Kohen Mashuach Milchama. Has anyone come by this term? Kohen Mashuach Milchama. Not only is there a Kohen Gadol, but there's a Kohen who's anointed to give a pep talk to the Jewish people prior to the going out to war. That's, I think, in Devarim chapter 20. It could be that Pinchas has that job. He could be a Kohen, Mashuach Milchama. He's leading the nation spiritually, perhaps. He's not a military genius. And he has a job spiritually to lead. That could be another answer why he's leading them. We see no mentioning of Pinchas thereafter and this time. Moshe and Elazar meet the returners coming back to the war. We don't see champagne being opened up. We have a break. They're giving them kavod. Let's just see right now a few psukim, raise a few questions, and get back to our analysis. In Pasuk Yud Gimel 13, and I'm reading, Vayitzu Moshe ve'Elazar Kohen v'chol nesei ha'ida likratam el michutz lamachaneh. Without further notice, we'll understand that Moshe sees who is brought into captivity, as it's stated in verse 9 earlier, that the woman of Midian, Vayikzof Moshe al pikudei ha'chayil, sarei alafim v'sarei ha'me'ot, habai mitzvah milchama, vayomer lehem Moshe hachayitem kol nekeva? In a state of wonder, did you leave them alive? And then he brings the explanation why it should be clear. The woman led, I'm sure the men send over the women, as it states here in verse 16, and that was the trick of getting them to do idolatry and adultery, and that's why we had the tremendous Mageifa. So there's something missing here. Moshe is angered. He's rebuking, not the leader Pinchas, not anyone else. He goes to the high-ranking officers, and he gives them a piece of his mind out of anger, out of rebuking. Why is he rebuking? It's clear to Moshe that who should have been killed, who should have been wiped out? The women. They are the ones that, in fact, brought down this immorality. They are the causing for Israel to stumble, to fail. Right at the doorstep, about entering into the land of Israel, we're the ones that received the Torah at Sinai. We're carrying a divine banner, and here we fail. That's a failure for the nation. It's a failure for the leadership. And now, Moshe Rabbeinu is it clear to us, gets very general instructions from God. One pasuk are the instructions of God in verse 2. Do you see that back? Nekom nikmat b'nei Yisrael. That's all that God said. And now, the decisions, the instructions are Moshe's. He talks about zrizut, alacrity. He talks about it's a war of avenge, of nikama. He talks about only 1,000 soldiers, and they must be the most righteous, the ones that are giborim, courageous. Mi'u gibor kovesh et yitzro, as the Mishnah says, someone who can overcome things that are alerting his willpower and maybe knocking him down morally. No, a gibor. We need anashim tzadikim, giborim, that don't fall for their yetzer hara. These are the decisions of Moshe Rabbeinu. And no other instructions are given. And now they're coming back. Moshe's rebuking them. Why didn't you heal the woman? So the Ramban really says, Moshe thought Aleph, and Elazar Pinchas and the high-ranking soldiers thought, well, just the men that sent the woman should be killed. Remember, this is not a war like Kibush Eretz Yisrael. What are we told regarding conquering the land of Israel later in the book of Devarim, which was given at Sinai, regarding the war of the Canaanites? Lo techayeh kol neshama. Have you heard of that pasuk? You're not allowed to leave alive any soul, any being, men, women, and children. They thought maybe this is not the same type of halachic war of going to war of conquering the land of Israel, idolaters, but rather it's different. And therefore we see here that Moshe Rabbeinu is not only disappointed, but he's rebuking them, but he doesn't go straight to Pinchas. Why not? Everyone's asking that question. He wants to honor Pinchas, wants to show honor. Usually, who gets the blame? Number one, who's on top? They get the credit and they get the blame because they're utterly responsible. So a lot of the Rishonim are talking about that. No, he wants to show honor to Pinchas, and therefore he ignores Pinchas, and he gives the rebuke, the criticism to the high-ranking soldiers, and he explains. So this mistake, according to Moshe, can be corrected. You didn't pass your first exam, you could be called for Moed Bet, right? You have another time to redo the war, and that's really the instructions in verse 17 and 18. V'ata, and now, Hirku calls the Bataf, even the children, anyone that's a male, should be killed. So here it is, Moshe Rabbeinu was giving them b'diavad, a second chance of taking care of the children, especially the women, whereas the women that are underage for having relations can be left alive. And we're basically up to verse Yud Chet. Before we do a further analysis of this, you had a question. Yes?
In Parshat Matot, verse 5, it talks about Nasru.
Right. And when we noticed yesterday that it's in the Nif'al tense.
Right. So this might be the reason
of
why they were not killing the woman. Because they didn't volunteer.
They didn't want to go to the war.
Yeah,
but one second. Moshe Rabbeinu went to the head of the tribe of Reuven, head of the tribe of Shimon, head of the tribe of Yudi. You find 1,000 soldiers only.
Right.
They could have found 20,000 soldiers each. But that's not what they're looking to be. I want you to find 1,000 tzaddikim. They're found. They're ready. Come on. And no one's coming. Let's go. Rashi, in the name of Chazal, noticed why is it written that they had to be coaxed. They had to be urged to come to the war. Because they know that after the end of the war, who's going to be dying? Who's going to pass away? Moshe Rabbeinu. We're told that dependent upon this war, after the war ends, Moshe Rabbeinu's days are numbered. They wanted to delay it, time out. We want Moshe Rabbeinu. We want Moshe. We don't want him to go.
I was connecting to the point where
At least one guy appreciates my singing. What?
The leader of the army, the captains, that why do you have to, bring back this woman, the next woman? And
they're bringing them back. They can be slaves. They can work a workforce for the Jewish people.
What I'm saying is when Hashem commands someone, a leader, to go and fight, kill these people.
But he didn't give, there's no clear, the instructions from God in general. Nikom nikmat, do a war of vengeance. Moshe Rabbeinu is also very general.
Right.
He doesn't give clear instructions.
Right.
He doesn't say that, and they thought, okay, we can leave the woman alive. It's not a war like capturing the land of Israel.
However, we can see that Pinchas already did that thing. They saw that the Amish saw that what was happening.
But now
and when they asked to go and fence it.
So what's your point of your question? What do you want to say?
What I want to say is they don't want to do the mitzvah of killing them. They were reluctant. Oh, we're going to have to kill these people.
You're right that they were reluctant. They didn't kill the woman. You're right. They didn't kill.
That mentality, maybe they saved those women, brought them back.
Oh, so that's a good thing you're saying. Mentality. We can't be too forgiving. We mentioned it briefly yesterday. Zachor et asher, one of the mitzvot of remembering. Remember what Amalek did to lecha, to you. Yet to you. Don't be forgiving. Don't be forgiving. The war against Amalek is also a type of revenge, even though the words nikama are not stated there. And by the way, who was the chief of staff of the war against Amalek? Yoshua. Why wasn't Yeshua chosen here? I'm going to talk about that briefly in a moment. Here is a failure. There's not clear instructions. And by the way, they don't say anything. They don't react. Moshe Rabbeinu rebukes them. We accept the rebuke. And they go ahead and finish up the job as we see. I want to make a few points now. Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded nikom. It didn't say nikmu. Furthermore, we learned that the word tzava here is mentioned several times. Army. Tzava is a host, a large collection. It's mentioned in Pasuk Gimel. And it's mentioned again in Pasuk Dalet. And the word tzava again is mentioned in Pasuk Hey. And again in Vav. When we went to war against Amalek, when we went to war against Sichon, the king of Amori, in the war against Og Melech HaBashan, the word tzava is not even mentioned once. Why is it mentioned here? And why is Moshe Rabbeinu the one doing this and not Yoshua ben Nun? So like we began saying, the war that we're learning about, gentlemen, here, is not conquering the land of Midian and annexing it to the Jewish people. We're not interested in Eretz Midian whatsoever. Okay? No, we're not. We're interested in a war, a cultural war, a war of spirituality. They used their tactics, their ploys, and they undermined the Jewish people. We lost. The Yetzer Hara overcame us. 24,000 died. Could have been even more had it not been for the heroic act, courageous act of Pinchas. The war here is going against the culture, to punish the people of Midian, that their culture is so open, so liberal, so gross, so terrible as far as sexual immorality. And that's what Bilam stands for. And we may get a taste of that when we go and cross the Jordan River and meet up with the Canaanites, even though the Plishtim are even worse, as we learn later on. So right now, the war here is against the nation of Midian, not the land of Midian. And right now, we have a big, big loss to repair. That right now we're delayed. We're at the footsteps, gentlemen. We're sitting in Arvot Moab. We're sitting in the land of Shittim, the lowlands. Yoo-hoo! The Jordan River's in front of us. We're at the doorstep. And here at the doorstep, we flunked. We lost. Terrible thing. Why is Moshe commanded nikom? And why is Moshe Rabbeinu using the word tzava, tzava, tzava? Some of the Mefarshim explain, my dear friends, that anything related until the crossing of the Jordan River is under the jurisdiction, under the responsibility of Moshe Rabbeinu. Thereafter, crossing the Jordan, the new leader is going to take place, Yoshua ben Nun. And maybe that'll explain the term tzava appearing and appearing time and time again. Moshe Rabbeinu understands he's a fighter. He's told that he's not going in for his sin. He's told that Yoshua now will replace him. Samach et yadav. He put his hands and brought Yoshua into the job. Yet Moshe Rabbeinu is still the leader right now. Why? Whatever is related until the entrance of the land of Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu shows leadership. Moshe Rabbeinu demonstrates leadership. Moshe Rabbeinu is commanded to do this war of nikama. And Moshe Rabbeinu therefore uses the word tzava, 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 because we as a nation, both culturally, spiritually, and physically, have to get ready to an important job that I'm not going to lead you, and that is forming an army. Forming an army, and this army has to be first and foremost led by the Tanakh, led by the spiritual banner. We're not just any army. We're an army of values of God. We're an army that fight according to divine guidelines. We're an army that fights according to the ideals of a God. And therefore, when Yeshua, after the passing away of Moshe Rabbeinu, when, as we've mentioned this in times of our Tanakh study, as the Yerushalmi Gemara brings it, Yeshua inaugurates the new Israeli postal system, and he sends in 3 letters to warn the Canaanites. Gentlemen, we're coming in to the land that God gave us as the Jewish people. The doors are open. You can leave. We won't shoot one arrow. No answer. Maybe they couldn't find stamps, the Canaanites. Yeshua sends in a second letter. Gentlemen, we're coming in. Do away with your religious activities of polytheism, idolatry. Again, no answer. And then, number 3, gentlemen, we're coming in, get ready to fight a war. We're going to fight you. That's the morals of the Jewish people, that we are to call out in peace. Machloket Rambam, I'm not going to get into it now. Do we or are we obligated to call out peace also in war, in a war of mitzvah, or not? According to this Talmud Yerushalmi, we are calling out first in peace before we're coming in. We have values, okay? The United States is not going to teach the Jewish people to fight a moral war when they're using their B-52 bombers and bombing everyone from all the way up in Afghanistan and killing civilians. Do you remember that? In Iraq and Afghanistan, all of that. Then they're telling us that we're immoral. You know what a pincetta is? What is a pincetta? What is that? To take tweezers. Out with tweezers. Our wars that we fight are so careful. We like using tweezers. When I was in yeshiva and we had the first Milchemet Shalom HaGalil, was that 81 or 82? I forgot which one it was, yes? The Beit Midrash emptied out. We were a few people that were still here in Machon Meir. My chavruta, Kuchini, Menachem Kalango, Rabbi Menachem, lives in Elomar, is a teacher. He was in Chir, he was in infantry, and I was praying for everyone and for him also. Thank God he came back, but like he told me, they were in these Christian villages, and the terrorists were hiding behind inside Christian homes and this and that, and we were so careful to go into these homes, etc., and we risked our lives. We could have easily bombed them, whatever. No, we're very moral people. Moshe Rabbeinu's job is to prepare the nation of Israel with an army that they're going to go in and fight the moral wars of the Jewish people. And therefore, after the tremendous loss, the decline of the Jewish people, right now, he's preparing a tzava. Tzava. Pinchas ben Azar Kohen letzava. Everyone's going in as one army, united. Tzava. A host, a large number of people, but all with one objective. They're going in with this ultimate objective. They're saying goodbye to their wives and their children. They're going in to fight. And we see the results. Although the women are left alive, we see the results of this war. Gentlemen, a war is fought. They're now coming back. And now they come back. In verse 19, Pasuk Yutet, V'yatem chanu michutz lamachaneh shivat yamim. Don't come into the camp right now, gentlemen. Why not? Kol horeg nefesh, verse 19, everyone that kills a soul, v'chol nogea bechalal, or anyone that touches a slain person, titchateu bayom hashlishi ubayom hashvi'i yatemu shvichem. We learned chitui. In which parsha did we learn? Sprinkling on the 3rd day and 7th day. Which parsha did we learn this? Chukat. The laws of paraduma. Taking the ashes of the red heifer and sprinkling upon someone who is to the dead. Tamei to the dead. to the dead, even of non-Jews? Yes. The absence of life, even in non-Jews, is impurity, is spiritual defilement. We're a nation that lives a life of Kedusha. There's nothing like this in the world. We're not a religion. We're not, Jews, in the synagogue Saturday morning, and then we do what we want on the bakery, waiting online. You can curse anyone and elbow anyone. No. We have a life of divinity in our home, in our office, waiting online, in the battlefield, and paying taxes. From Aleph to Taf. We're not a religion. We're a way of life. You're cleaving on to God, your Lord. Chayim. Kulchem hayom, Devarim chapter 4. So here we're learning about Tum'ah, even to a non-Jew. We learned a bit of it regarding Tumat Ohel. Okay? Without touching and killing someone, being under the roof of a dead person, we learned a concept called Tumat Ohel. It says, V'chol asher ba'ol yitma shivat yamim, Bamidbar chapter 19. There we learned Machloket Rabbi Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Chachamim. If there's Tumat Ohel, only in Israel or also amongst the Jews. Here, if you look in Rashi in verse 19, Titchateu. Do you remember the shoresh, the root of the word? Titchateu obviously doesn't mean chet, sin. But it means, remember what it means? Chitui. What is it? Chitui is sterilization, isn't it? Okay? Lechateh something is to sterilize something. Here we're talking about spiritual sterilization. It can also mean to sprinkle. Do they use the word sprinkling in English here? Yes. They do? Yes. Okay. Look at Rashi, Titchateu. How are you going to sterilize yourself? Rashi says, b'mei nida. Mei nida is our... What's mei nida?
It's the water mixed with the ash of the power.
What is lenadot?
Sprinkling.
Yeah.
Lenadot, okay? Aravim yadu avanim, but Tomat Sinjel, I think a day or two ago, and one of the women in one of the close by Yeshuvim, her skull was fractured or something terrible. She's in bad shape in front of her children. Arab terrorists threw stones. Yidu avanim. That's what we call attempt for murder. Unfortunately, Hashem sent the refuah shlema. So titchatu b'mei nida. Mei, mayim, that linadot that you sprinkle on. Kedin shar t'mei mitim, like the law of others that are defiled to the dead. Sha'af l'divrei omer kivrei goyim enam mitamim ba'oel. Even those that say, it's the Gemara Masechet Yevamot, that the tombstones, the graves of non-Jews cannot cause contamination inside a tent, inside a house. Shene'emar, as it says in Yechezkel, this is the quote from the Gemara. Follow the Rashi, please. Ve'etnatzo nitzon mariti adamatem. The word Adam appears in many prophecies in the book of Yechezkel. And what does the Talmud say, Masechet Yevamot, on the usage of the word Adam? Rashi brings it, Atem kruyim Adam. You, plural. Who is you, plural? Am Yisrael is called Adam, meaning we are the cream of the crop of human beings in the world. Here, for the laws of Tum'ah, and therefore Kivrei Goyim, the grave sites of non-Jews, will not mitamei ba'oah, because there it's a prophecy talking about Adam. Modehu, he still admits that same opinion that there's not Tumat Ohel with non-Jews dead. He admits Shagoy mitamei b'maga u'masah. Okay, play dead. Don't. Play dead. He's dead. You see that? And I'm a non-Jew. Okay? And he's a non-Jew. And I play dead. And I touch him. Then he admits, the same opinion says, no, there's no Tumat Ohel with non-Jews, but Tumat Maga, touching. Okay? Or I'm going to lift up this chair of the dead without touching the dead. That's called tumat masah, lifting up without touching. He agrees that regarding Gentiles, there is contamination of tumat mate called maga and masah. So therefore, here we're coming back from the war against the Midianites. Moshe, hey! Don't come into the camp. Which camp can he not come in?
Israel.
Tumat mate is the least of tumat zav and tumat mitzvah. He can't go into tumat right. So machaneh shechina. So if there are kohanim coming back to work, etc., from this war, or Leviim, etc., they can't go into certain areas. For how many days can they not go in? 7 days. And when can they go in? After what? Number 1, chitoy, sprinkling them, Yom Shlishi and Yom HaShvi'i. And then another law we learned in Parshat Chukat, when the sun comes down, stars come out, and going to the mikveh, then they're allowed to eat kodeshim or so. Questions?
Is there any halakha like that today still? Like when Israel goes to war?
Are there limitations today of after touching the dead? What do you have in your pocket? Do you have some ashes of the red heifer? Ranan?
Okay, that answers your question.
Okay. So, since we don't have the ashes of the red heifer today, it's not applicable. But tonight or tomorrow, we may be with the Mashiach be here, one of the red heifer, etc. Yes. Question 2.
Just on this concept, we're saying going, you can have tuma if you touch them or lift them. Is there tuma in animals as well?
No. There are, the Sheva Shratzim in Vayikra chapter 6 listed there.
No,
Dead reptiles of 7 that are enumerated there in Vayikra.
And other animals live except tuma?
There's a tuma of eating, let's say, in nevela, something which is tameh. It's called tumat beit habliya when it's being swallowed, but that could be just a yom echad tuma. Yes, Thomas.
So if there is a dead body in the house, the Kohen can enter in the same house?
Can. However, we for Kohanim they stay away from it as much as possible, and therefore in our many hospitals in Eretz Yisrael there's a sign put out at the entrance, a warning for Kohanim if some God forbid passed away in that time and never moved them out to another building. It'll say Azara the Kohanim, a warning or cautioning to Kohanim. We try to stay away from Tumat Ohel as much as possible because maybe it's a Jew. And not a goy, that's the reason. There's tumat oel for a Jew. So God forbid, when it happens, and there are good hospitals that they put out a warning sign. Yes, Eliav.
I'm also thinking that this prohibition was settled because it was only 40 years has passed since they left Egypt. And in Egypt, they used to worship the dead. And they used to have this kind of customs of mummifying people and everything. So I think this mitzvah was for making a fence between what they lived before and what they are going to experience.
Shlomo Melech, what do you say? He says he doesn't know. Shlomo Melech said, Ech kama mimeni. I tried understanding the laws of the red heifer and all this and that. It could be, we don't know. But he says, wow, these laws are such a chok, what a chok. Use these ashes and you purify someone from contamination. But you're working in the field of making the ashes, sprinkling, you become tameh. It could be, we don't know. And that's why it's called a chok, which means there's no human rationale, we don't understand. Could be. Mr. Michael Aryeh.
It's a very strange question.
We'll decide if it's strange.
Also, I know it's not allowed, but if you accidentally kill a mosquito, is that tameh?
I can't believe you did that.
Oh, wait.
Do you know what I did at 3:15 this morning?
Rolled over in bed, hopefully.
I got up to take care of my needs, and I felt I heard these jets, these mosquitoes, right. So I tried to convince myself I'm going to be hot. So I got up a second time. I went to the medicine chest and I took this. What's this? Mimrach. Altush. I took this Altush, which is it's a liquid. It's like a roll-on, and I put over here, all these areas where my body's exposed, and I slept. I didn't kill them. I slept quietly until 5:30 or so, with mosquitoes not zooming on in me. They have this radar. Right. So no, there's no tuman killing mosquitoes. You're allowed to kill them if they're bothering you. There could even be some poskim, but I'm not going to say that. That maybe on Shabbos. I'm not going to get into that. I heard something weird not long ago. Gabriel, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
I was thinking something. But...
Okay, I'm happy that you're using. I'm thinking. I'm also going to start thinking, and we're going to go forward, gentlemen. Here it's revealed that the Eitzah of Bil'am here in verse 16 was to undermine the Jewish people by doing this. However, when we studied this case in the last parsha, the Torah didn't tell us that. What do you notice from this? There are times that the Torah does not disclose things, and in other places does disclose things. Or in the language of the Talmud, HaTorah aniya b'makom echad, ashira b'makom acher. It's as if it's impoverished in one place, more affluent and giving us more information. That is the style of the Torah. It doesn't have to tell you. It's not a TV correspondent telling you all the details and boring you, and this and that when it's happening. Torah has reasons. We don't know all the wisdom of the Torah, but notice this matter, please. Okay. We're now coming to Pasuk Kaf Aleph, 21 and on. Let's start reading. By the way, Pasuk Kaf, V'chol beged v'chol kli or, v'chol maseh izim v'chol kli eitz, tit cha ta'o. Here is the source of a beged becoming tameh. A beged, meaning any raw material, woven, manufactured to be worn as an article of covering your body. That's a beged. It's also called in the language of Chazal a kli, a vessel. Yes, kalim are not necessarily your dishes and your pottery, but kalim in Mishnaic literature is a beged as well. Anything that theoretically can contain or hold on to something. So told here, beged v'chol klior, you have any kalim made out of leather. V'chol maseh izim, any materials made from the skins of izim, the goat's hair. V'chol klietz, any wooden dishes that you have, they have to become purified. Meaning, if they came in contact with what? The dead, tumat mate, they too have to come here. Okay, so that ends the matter of the instructions of the soldiers coming back from war. And now we hear further things. Pasuk Kaf Aleph. Vayomer Elazar Kohenin al anshe hatzava ba'im lamilchama. Okay, Elazar, the Kohen Gadol, took over after his father passed away. He tells the officers coming back from the war, Zot chukata Torah shartziva Hashem et Moshe. What I'm telling you right now is a chok of Torah. We'll add that we received it where? At Sinai. Let's not be mistaken and think, well, since we're reading it here right now in the 40th year, maybe it was only given now and not at Sinai. Do you remember Parshat Bahar, Vayikra 25? Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai Limor. And then it talks about Shemitah. The classic question Chazal asked, what does Shemitah have to do with Har Sinai? Rather, Ma Shemitah klalei upratea ne'amru b'Sinai, av kol haTorah v'mitzvot klalei upratea ne'amru b'Sinai. Just like Shemitah matters, all the rules, all the sabbatical rules and the details were given at Sinai, so too all the Torah was given at Sinai. It could be that as far as the appearance in the Torah, it appears in Arvot Moav. Do you remember, ever since the incident of Miriam and her passing away in Parshat Chukat, we have shifted to the year number 40. Several months after that, I don't know how long, we arrived at Arvot Moav. In Arvot Moav, we're hearing about new sections of Torah that we have yet to hear about in the learning of the Chumash. But it was given to the nation through Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai. And now we're going to learn about other chukim. Chukim? We're going to learn about matters of taharot. Right? In the Mishnah, order number 6. Taharot. Right? In the 6 orders of the Shas Mishnayot, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, we come to Taharot, and there we have all the laws of what is becoming impure, what's not pure, how do you purify them and not. And before we start reading, your question is?
I have 2 questions. One is, I want to understand, you're saying that you put these things in the water, the garment and the wood, and
Mikveh.
yeah, okay. That takes out the tuma of met?
Tumat mate of a beggar. Tumat made of a beggar. We didn't get to anything else yet. Tumat made of a beggar, I'm sorry, is not a mikvah. It could be a sprinkling. The same way, the sprinkling of the afer, may afer paradama. The water is mixed with the ashes of the red heifer.
The question is, why wouldn't that work for gold and silver and copper and iron and tin?
You are preceding the reading of the next pasuk. How dare you do that? I know you have a lot of azut as a mefaked, but we didn't get to read that yet. I take, what's the next word? I take,
offense, maybe?
Not offense, no. I challenge you, don't do that again, please.
Okay, then I have a second question.
Okay.
The reason that we said that,
See the difficulty?
that Yeshua doesn't come is because
The-
if you want spirituality and custody, not because any other reason.
If we'd be doing the conquering of the land of Israel, then Yeshua would be given the leadership task to lead the war. But it's not a matter of kibush aretz.
Does Yeshua lead the war against Sihon? No, that would be decided.
It doesn't say that. It says Moshe. Moshe was there.
So that's what I understand.
You're right. So that's a good question. Why? So apparently it's only after the crossing of the Jordan River. Whatever is going to happen after the crossing of the Jordan, it's under Yeshua's leadership. Even though Sichon and Og are Canaanite entities, maybe starting it.
It's about the land, though.
That's about land, but it's land of Eastern Eretz Yisrael, which is less holy than Western Eretz Yisrael. That's still under the guidance of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeshua.
Okay, Mr. Messiah.
How do you purify the H? Because
Purify what?
it's the kalim of its sin.
Apparently, there's a sprinkling of
The red heifer can't do that.
Tumat
Tumat
mate.
We'll get to in a second.
Whether these kalim touched a mate,
I understand.
they have to be sprinkled upon.
I understand the metal thing, but
You understand? Moshe Shlomo Melech didn't understand. What do you understand? The wise, or you understand the you don't understand the practical? What do you understand? The wise, we don't know. It's a chok.
yeah, but the wooden thing you cannot. The water cannot, you cannot mikveh and toivel it, or you cannot burn them. It's going to ruin them. So how do you?
Who says you have to burn them? We're taking ashes mixed with water of the red heifer and sprinkling on. No libun. We're not talking about libun. We didn't. You're preceding. You're going to derech mitayim. We're not talking about the dishes and the pottery of the Midrash, which we're about to begin right now. We're about to begin right now. We're talking about kalim made out of eights that came in contact with the dead. They too, like bigadim, like the persons, have to go through the purification process of sprinkling Yom Shlishi Yom Shvi. And now we're ready to start reading Pasuk Kaf Aleph 21. We're putting our nose inside the Chumash. 21. Vayomer Elazar Kohen El Anshe Tzava. So we read that already. I'm sorry. Kaf Bet. Ach, not brother. However. Look, let's now enumerate 6 metals. Et hazahav, vet hakasef, et hanechoshet, et habarzel, et habidil, vet haofaret. Meaning, there's a word that's not even mentioned. The kalim, the vessels that are made out of any one of these 6 metals. What are we learning? Remember, we took back a lot of dishes, cutlery, okay, things that are used in the local Midianite kitchens, okay, and bacon and eggs and all that good stuff, etc. Unkosher bacon and eggs we're talking about. Kol davar, and now we're given instructions about all these metal dishes, any matter, asher yavo va'esh, that's used with heat. I'll add dry heat. And of course, let's add what the oral Torah explains. these metal dishes, what is swallowed inside the kli? The taste of an unkosher food product. Is there a way how to expiate? Is that such a word in English? How do we expiate? How do we take it out? Sure. If you have a pan that they baked, pig bread and spaghetti and meatballs, whatever, in a dry pan that's used in dry heat, taviru veish, what we call libun, put it into fire, vitair, and then I'll be purified from what?
Impurity.
Not too much.
Trafiness.
It's unkosher food, taste of unkosher food that is swallowed in there. Ach, b'mei nida yitchata. I'm now shifting and going to the midrashic halacha interpretation of this. B'mei nida yitchata, I'm leaving the pshat, and I'm going according to a midrashic halacha that Rashi also brings. This is the source for the Torah mitzvah called Tivilat Kalim. I was in downtown Cuba, and I bought a set of new pots and pans. Not in China, in Cuba.
No, it's a type of.
I know, I'm just playing with you. I have to take them and put them into main nida. Here, the word nida will be interpreted otherwise. The waters that a nida woman, a menstruating woman, will be able to immerse herself in. What you and I call a collection of waters called a mikveh. Thomas, spell the word mikveh. It's in Breshit, chapter 1. Mem. Very nice. And there's some that write two vavs, but it's a three-pointer. You didn't. That's a good one. Mikveh. I'm happy. I'm proud of you. So here is the source of, number one, hachsharat kalim. Hachsharat kalim, the koshering of kalim that were used by the Midianites. Now we've taken them and we're learned that dishes used in dry heat of the six metals can be koshered. And of course, the rule that we learned is kebol'o kach polto. The way it swallowed or absorbed the prohibited test, so too liflot, it will expiate it, it will take it out. And therefore the second part, in verse 23, V'chol asher lo yavo ba'esh, whatever dishes you use, but it's not used in fire, rather, it'll be used what? In water, as we see. Taviru b'mayim. You have pots that are used for cooking with water. That's the way it absorbed unkosher taste. Taviru, pass it in water, in this case boiling water, and so on and so forth. Why in the world? What question could you raise about the position of the section?
Because they...
Question raised, please.
Well, I mean, I said why. I mean,
why what?
Why are they doing the temple? Why are they doing all this? And it's because
I'm inviting another question.
Like from Lipun, they're going to the mikveh.
The position of this mitzvah, why is it appearing here?
Because it's right after the army took all the booty.
Okay. That they have to go, they're coming into the land of Israel. They're coming to the land of Israel and they have to cook. They have to start cooking, not getting the man, but they have to make their own food.
Moshe Rabbeinu, didn't you take the nation to war against Sichon? A few months ago, yeah. On the other side, yeah, on the same side of the Jordan. And Og. Didn't you take cutlery, chinaware? Huh? Why not teach us there?
The man is going to stop very soon. The moment.
Why not teach us there?
I'll say it's probably not the answer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wait, is it the man? The one that
Would you believe me?
he said like 4 times.
Would you believe me that we were allowed to eat bacon and eggs and other pork products when we fought against Sichon and Og? Gemara Masechet Chulin, right? It was Daf Yud Zayin. Where is it? Yes, Chulin Yud Zayin. When we went to war, I mean, the question is, why didn't we learn about these laws then? Didn't it bring us that we brought back booty? Quote, Ushlalam. It says in Dvarim 2, Habeima bazaznu ushlal harim asher lachan. We captured a lot of stuff. We became very wealthy after the war against Sichon and Og. We took their dishes, their cutlery, and their Maytag washers, and all these things, and so on and so forth. Why weren't we taught the laws of hachsharat kalim and tivilat kalim in a mikveh there? The Gemara Masechet Chulin Daf Yud Zayin teaches a very interesting thing that the Ramban writes here at great length. Ramban says, when we're doing kibush haaretz, when we're even the eastern side of the land of Israel doing a war of mitzvah on the eastern side of Eretz Yisrael, we are osek b'mitzvah. We're doing a war of mitzvah to capture the eastern land of Eretz Yisrael. When we're going to war, and the soldiers are hungry, and their reinforcements are not bringing up food, and they've captured some towns of Sichon, Amorite towns, or some Bashan towns in the Golan, and so on and so forth, we can open up their fridge and eat of whatever's there. When we're osek b'mitzvah, we're exempt from all the other mitzvot. Do you hear that? When we're dealing with a lifetime mitzvah of capturing the land of Israel, we have a heter at the time of war to eat unkosher food. If we don't have any other food, we're allowed to eat unkosher food. Soldiers need caloric content in order to have power and energy to go to war. They're burning off a lot of calories, physically and psychologically, intense times when they're going to war. So the Gemara there talks about that in the war of Kibush Eretz Yisrael, there's a heter to eat non-kosher. It gives us the classic words, even bacon. It's brought there, tidli dechakli. I forgot the expression. I thought I wrote it somewhere else. Okay.
Where about the man?
The man, we described that already. We're starting to buy foods in and around the Moabite area and other areas. We're starting to buy foods, and that's why people started complaining about the man. But the man is in the camp of Israel. It's not at the war area. Okay? And you can't transport man from yesterday.
This is the principle that you're a sukkah mitzvah.
It's the date of, what is the date written on the man? It's only one day, right? Otherwise it goes bad. What'd you say? Ask.
This is on the concept of second mitzvah.
Patur min mitzvah, that's right. This, though, is not a regular war of mitzvah. This is a war of revenge. A war of cultural battle. We must teach the Midianites they can't do something like this and undermine the Jewish people morally and spiritually. And therefore, when we did take the shalal, the booty and the spoil against Sichon and Og, the laws of koshering the dishes or putting them into a mikveh, it was not applicable. It was not applicable. Kadali de chaziri, that's the term. Masechet Chulin uses the term kadali de chaziri, which is basically bacon. Are you a bacon expert? Anyone here a bacon expert? Is it true that they take, that's what I read in the Gemara, that they take that part of the meat from the neck, the oref? Does anyone know?
No. I'm not a bacon expert, but I am a chef, so...
do you know if the prime prime beef of pork is from this area?
No.
You don't know if it's from now?
I know that it's...
That it's not.
Bacon is... you have two basic types. You have belly bacon and you have back bacon. Back bacon is more popular.
Wow, it sounds so tasty. I really wish I can have it. I'm telling you, I really wish I can eat it. Yummy, without mustard. But you know what? I'm not going to eat it because God told me not to eat it.
But you can make it with lamb. It works.
I heard the pork is so tasty. Wow. Only if I can have it. But God told me I'm not allowed to have it. David Adler, how can you continue? How can you dare continue to laugh at my jokes after a year? Okay, gentlemen, what I just put on right now is a Gemara. Chazal say that we would love to eat it, but we can't because the Kadosh Baruch Hu commanded us not to eat it. Okay, so let's get back to the question that I was dealing with Yisrael 12 minutes ago. So we now understand the position of this prohibition written here, but something more than that. The war that we've just fought is not just a military war. It's a war of morality, spirituality, purity. Remember what we brought in the name of the Admor Pashischa? Hey Chaltzu, relieve yourself of any tendencies, of any bad intentions, any misthoughts. Purity of thought, of fighting a war of culture, of God's will to punish and revenge these Midianites. This is a very important war that we have to go to war spiritually and culturally. Therefore, chok, koshering, new dishes from non-Jews, are all under the realm of taharot. In the order number 6 of 6 orders of Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, in his great wisdom, itemized all these matters inside Seder number 6. We're dealing with purity. Jews, for 2,000 years, didn't deal with these laws. When we're in the Galut, we don't have purity. You noticed in the development of the oral Torah in Babylon, there's no Gemara in order number 6. It's strictly Mishnayot and not Gemarot. Because we didn't deal with these matters. It's so abstract, so distant from us. Now, thank God, we're coming back. We're starting to realize who we really are. Who's the authentic Jewish people? What is our life really about? And what is our proper mindsets? Okay? About 30 plus years ago, we were able to lead our group, our English group, in an old city tour. We spent the Shabbat there in the old city, specifically what's called the Muslim Quarter. And we met up with Rabbi Nachman Kahana, great scholar. His son is one of the few alufim with a kippah on his head, I think. I forgot his full name. He's the brother of Meir Kahana. He's a big scholar. And we have that set of Tosotim. Still the white set, but with the black. Can you take one out? If I'm not mistaken, can I? I think that this is the work of Rav Sharai Tosfot. I think the work of Rav Nachman Kahana, isn't it? No, I'm mistaken. Something else. Different set. I don't know why. In any event, Rav Nachman Kahana made Aliyah from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Rav Meir Kahana's brother. He had a young Israel, mamash at the end of the tunnel, from the Kotel area, the end of the tunnel going to the so-called Muslim Quarter. When you're coming out of the tunnel, to the left side, there's a synagogue there. Windows are like barricaded there. I think it's called Machon Haskel. That's where he used to have his Beit Midrash. We went in, we met with the Rav on Shabbos. Yeah. And we met with the Rav. And usually I try to have our students meet up with the Rav in the beginning of the semester on the first Thursday night of the Elul Zman. It's a real treat. He's a really big scholar. And he tells us that there's a kollel there studying matters of Kodeshim. This is 35 years ago, meaning the laws of sacrifices. This was a novelty. In certain kollel, they started studying, getting ready for Beit Mikdash matters. And that was a novelty then 30 plus years ago. And today, more and more people are even